She was burying her sister when I found them. Not in a grave. There was no strength left for digging, but beneath a thin layer of sand that the wind would scatter within hours. The other woman, the one still breathing, knelt beside the shallow mound with her hands pressed flat against the burning earth, her lips moving in prayers that produced no sound. The temperature was 58 degrees Celsius. The nearest human settlement was over 160 kilometers away, and I was about to witness something that would shatter everything I thought I understood about survival, about sisterhood, and about the unbreakable bonds that form when two women decide that dying alone is not an option. But here is what will haunt me for the rest of my life. The woman beneath the sand was not dead. She was sleeping. And the prayers her sister whispered were not farewells. They were pleas for the sun to show mercy for just one more day. What I am about to tell you is not a story of death. It is a story of two widows who refused to let the desert have the final word. I need to take you back to the beginning, to understand how Khadija and Zura ended up in the most inhospitable place on earth, with nothing but each other and a determination that defied all logic. They were not born sisters. They became sisters through marriage, Khadija wedding the eldest son of a Bedouin family, Zura marrying his younger brother 2 years later. In the traditional structure of desert life, this made them more than relatives. It made them partners, companions, two women bound together by the same household, the same responsibilities, the same fate. The brothers were traders who traveled the ancient caravan routes that crisscrossed the Sahara. 4 months at a time, Khadija and Zura would be left alone at the family compound, managing the goats, maintaining the home, raising children who grew up knowing their fathers only as occasional visitors bearing gifts and stories from distant places. It was a hard life, but not an unusual one. Countless women across the desert lived the same way, building their own communities of support while their men chased commerce across the endless sand. What made Khadija and Zura different was the depth of their connection. From the very beginning, they recognized something in each other, a kindred spirit, a matching resilience, a shared understanding that the world would not hand them anything they did not fight for themselves. They were the same age, born only 3 months apart, and over the years they developed the kind of bond that transcended ordinary friendship. They finished each other's sentences. They knew each other's moods without asking. They held each other through childbirths and illnesses and the long, lonely nights when the desert wind howled like a living thing and their husbands were somewhere beyond the horizon. "She is more my sister than my own blood sisters ever were," Khadija once told me, speaking of Zura with a tenderness that made my chest ache. "When I married into this family, I thought I was gaining a husband. I did not know I was gaining a soul." Their husbands died within a year of each other. First Zura's husband, Abdullah, killed by bandits who ambushed his caravan near the Libyan border. The news arrived via a passing trader, casual and devastating, delivered as if it were merely another piece of desert gossip. Zura did not speak for 3 days after hearing it. She sat motionless in the corner of their shared home, staring at nothing, while Khadija cared for both families' children and waited for her sister to return from whatever dark place her grief had taken her. Then, 11 months later, Khadija's husband, Mahmoud, succumbed to an illness that had been slowly consuming him for years. He died at home, at least, a small mercy, with Khadija holding his hand and their children gathered around his bed. His final words were not for his wife or his offspring, but for his brother. "Tell Abdullah the first I'm coming," he whispered, not knowing or not remembering that Abdullah was already gone. "Tell him to wait for me." Khadija never told Zura about those words. Some things are too heavy to share, even with a soul sister. After the deaths, everything changed. The family compound that had once bustled with life began to empty. Adult children, seeking opportunities in the cities, drifted away one by one. Grandchildren who had filled the home with noise and chaos were taken by their parents to places with schools and electricity and running water. Within 5 years, only Khadija and Zura remained, two widows in their 60s, alone in a place that the modern world had forgotten. They could have left. Their children begged them to leave, sending money for transport, making arrangements for housing in Algiers or Tunis or wherever there was room. But something kept them rooted to the sand, some combination of stubbornness and loyalty and a deep, unspoken fear of becoming burdens on families that had their own struggles to face. "This is our home," Zura said whenever the subject arose. "These walls remember us. This sand knows our footsteps. How can we abandon it?" What she did not say, what neither of them ever said aloud, was that leaving would mean acknowledging that their husbands were truly gone. As long as they stayed in the compound where they had built their lives together, some part of Abdullah and Mahmoud remained present. The chairs where they had Saturday, the tools they had used, the indentations in the sleeping mats where their bodies had rested night after night for decades. To leave would be to close a door that Khadija and Zura were not ready to close. So they stayed. And the desert, indifferent as always, continued to grow harsher. The first years alone were manageable. They had savings from their husbands' trading profits, enough to purchase supplies from the occasional nomad who passed through the region. They had a well that still produced water, though the output decreased with each passing season. They had each other, which meant they had someone to share the work, someone to talk to during the long nights, someone to remind them that they were not yet ghosts haunting an abandoned place. But time is undefeated, and the desert is patient. Gradually, the challenges mounted. Their bodies, once strong from decades of physical labor, began to betray them. Khadija's eyesight deteriorated until she could barely distinguish shapes from shadows. Zura's legs, damaged by a fall several years earlier, made walking an exercise in constant pain. The well produced less and less water, forcing them to ration with increasing severity. And the heat, the heat, seemed to intensify with each passing summer, as if the sun itself had declared war on their survival. The year I found them, temperatures in their region had reached unprecedented levels. 55 degrees became normal. 58 was not uncommon. Their mud brick home, which had always provided refuge from the worst of the heat, now felt like an oven during the peak afternoon hours. They developed a routine of sleeping during the day and working during the night. Their circadian rhythms completely reversed to accommodate an environment that had become openly hostile to human life. "The desert is testing us," Zura told me during one of our conversations. "It has always tested us. But now the tests are harder. Now it wants to know how much we are willing to suffer." "And?" I asked, "How much are you willing to suffer?" She looked at me with eyes that had witnessed 73 years of hardship and still retained their fire. "As much as necessary," she said. "Suffering ends. Surrender is forever." I arrived at their compound by accident, following a GPS error that led me dozens of kilometers off my intended route. My vehicle was overheating, my water supply was dangerously low, and I had resigned myself to spending a night in the open desert when I spotted their structure rising from the sand like a mirage made solid. The scene I encountered was one I will never forget. Zura collapsed beside what appeared to be a fresh grave, her body curled around the mound of sand as if trying to protect it from the sun. My first thought was that I had arrived too late, that she was mourning her sister, that the desert had finally claimed one of them. But as I approached, I realized the truth was more complicated. Khadija was not dead. She was in a self-induced state of near hibernation, a technique that Zura explained had been passed down through generations of desert women. By slowing her breathing, lowering her heart rate, and burying herself beneath a thin layer of sand, Khadija could survive the hottest hours of the day with minimal water consumption. It was not sleep, exactly, and it was not unconsciousness. It was something in between, a survival mechanism that existed nowhere in medical literature but had kept women alive in this hostile environment for centuries. "She will wake when the sun begins to set," Zura assured me, her voice hoarse from dehydration but steady with certainty. "She always wakes. We have been doing this for 3 summers now, taking turns, watching over each other. One buries, one guards. Then we switch." I watched in amazement as the sun tracked across the sky and, precisely as Zara had predicted, Khadija began to stir. The sand shifted. A hand emerged, then an arm, then a face covered in fine brown powder that did nothing to hide the alert intelligence in her nearly blind eyes. "We have a visitor," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "I heard his vehicle an hour ago. What does he want?" "He is lost," Zura replied, "and his water is almost gone." Khadija turned her unseeing gaze toward me, her expression unreadable. "Then we will share what we have," she said. "That is the law of the desert. Help those who need help, and trust that someday, someone will help you." Over the following days, my vehicle needed repairs that could not be accomplished without parts one did not have, forcing me to wait for a rescue that took nearly a week to arrive. I learned the rhythms of Khadija and Zura's extraordinary existence. I watched them navigate a life that should have been impossible, sustained by routines so precise and cooperation so seamless that it seemed choreographed. Their days, or rather their nights, began at sunset. They would emerge from their home into the cooling air, performing prayers together in perfect synchronization, their voices intertwining in the Arabic verses they had recited since childhood. Then came the work, checking the well, tending the small garden they maintained using recycled water, repairing whatever had been damaged by the previous day's heat. They divided tasks based on their respective limitations. Zura, whose legs made walking difficult, handled the stationary work, cooking, sewing, organizing their meager supplies. Khadija, nearly blind but still mobile, took responsibility for the physical tasks that required movement, fetching water, checking the perimeter of their compound for signs of animals or approaching storms. "We are one person with two bodies," Zura explained. "Where I am weak, she is strong. Where she cannot see, I become her eyes. Together, we are complete. Apart, we would be broken." Their food supply was precarious, consisting mainly of dates from 3 ancient palms, dried meat that they prepared whenever an animal wandered into their compound, and flatbread made from flour that arrived perhaps twice a year via passing nomads. They ate once a day, always together, always sharing whatever they had in exactly equal portions. "In the early days after our husbands died, we argued about this," Khadija admitted. "I would try to give Zura more because she was thinner. She would try to give me more because my eyesight required more nutrition. We wasted so much energy fighting about who deserved less." "How did you resolve it?" "We agreed to a rule," Zura said. "Whatever we have, we split in half. No exceptions. No negotiations. If there is only one date, we each take half. If there is only one cup of water, we each drink half. This way, there is nothing to argue about. And if splitting means there is not enough for either of you to survive." They looked at each other, or rather, Zura looked at Khadija, and Khadija turned her head in the direction of her sister's presence. "Then we do not survive," Khadija said simply. "But we do not survive together. That is the only way we know how to die." The nights were long, and the sisters filled them with conversation. They talked about their husbands, keeping the memories alive through endless retelling. They talked about their children and grandchildren, wondering aloud how their lives were progressing in cities neither woman had ever seen. They talked about the past, the festivals they had celebrated, the storms they had weathered, the countless small moments that had accumulated into a lifetime of shared experience. But they also talked about the future, which surprised me. I had expected them to be focused entirely on survival, on getting through each day without looking beyond the next sunrise. Instead, they spoke of plans and dreams with an optimism that seemed almost delusional given their circumstances. "When the rains return, we will plant a proper garden," Zura said one night. "Tomatoes, peppers, everything we used to grow. When my eyesight comes back, I will embroider again," Khadija added. "I was known for my embroidery, you know. Women from 3 villages would commission me for wedding dresses. When our children come to visit, we will cook them a feast. A proper feast, like we used to make." They spoke these fantasies without irony, without any indication that they recognized them as impossible. And gradually, I understood why. The dreams were not about the future at all. They were about maintaining hope, about refusing to surrender to despair, about keeping their minds engaged with possibility rather than paralyzed by reality. If we admit that nothing will ever get better, then what is the point of surviving? Zura asked when I gently questioned their optimism. The hope is not about what will happen. The hope is about who we choose to be while we wait for it to happen. On my 4th night with them, I witnessed something that crystallized everything I had been observing into a single, unforgettable image. Zura was having a bad night. Her legs, which always pain her, had swollen dramatically, making even the shortest movements agonizing. She sat on her sleeping mat, tears streaming down her weathered face, trying to hide her condition from Khadija and failing completely. Khadija, who could not see the tears but could hear the catch in her sister's breath, moved across the room with surprising grace. She located Zura by sound, knelt beside her, and began massaging the swollen legs with hands that had decades of practice. "You should not waste your energy on me," Zura protested weakly. "This is not a waste," Khadija replied. "This is what we do. This is what we have always done." For over an hour, in a room with no electricity and a temperature that was still well above 40 degrees despite the darkness, Khadija worked on her sister's legs. She hummed softly, old songs from their girlhood, melodies that probably had not been sung anywhere else on earth for decades. Zura's tears gradually subsided, replaced by a peace that settled over her like a blanket. "Remember when we were young and we thought we would never grow old?" Zura asked, her voice drowsy. "I remember," Khadija said. "We were fools. We were beautiful fools. That we were, sister. That we were." They fell asleep that way, Khadija's hands still resting on Zura's legs, Zura's fingers intertwined with her sister's, two women who had found in each other the only medicine that mattered. When my rescue finally arrived, I asked Khadija and Zura if they wanted to leave with me. I had space in the vehicle. I had contacts who could help them find housing, medical care, a life that did not require such constant struggle. They declined, as I had known they would. We are not surviving here, Zura corrected me gently. We are living here. There is a difference. What is the difference? Khadija answered, her sightless eyes somehow finding mine. Surviving is what you do alone. Living is what you do with someone you love. We have each other. We have our memories. We have our home, even if it is not much of one. What more could your cities offer that would be worth losing all of that? I left them standing at the entrance to their compound, arm in arm as always, two small figures against the vast enormity of the desert. The last thing I saw before the sand swallowed them from view was Zura adjusting Khadija's headscarf, tucking a strand of grey hair back into place, a gesture so ordinary, so tender, so full of unspoken love that it broke something inside me. I have told their story many times since then, to audiences who listen with disbelief and wonder. How can two elderly women survive in such conditions? How can the human body endure such heat, such scarcity, such isolation? The questions miss the point entirely. Khadija and Zura survive because they refuse to survive alone. They live because they have made living a shared project, a joint venture in which every task is divided and every burden is halved. The desert is merciless, yes, but its cruelty is no match for the simple, stubborn power of two women who have decided that as long as one of them breathes, neither of them is alone. If you have someone in your life who makes the unbearable bearable, a sister, a friend, a partner in the truer sense of the word, I hope this story reminds you of their value. Tell them while you can. Show them while there is time. And if you do not have such a person yet, keep your heart open. The desert is vast, but connection finds a way. Leave a comment below and tell me about your own sisterhood, your own partnership, your own person who would kneel in the burning sand to massage your legs when the pain became too much. These stories matter. Your story matters. And if you want to hear more about the extraordinary lives being lived in the forgotten corners of our world, stay with us. There is so much more to discover, so many more reminders that love is the most powerful survival tool ever created. Until next time, may you never walk the desert alone.